Remarkable at this point in time is that rather than being a completely made-up fiction, make-believe, pious, inspired fiction story, we actually now, based on the critical biblical scholarship of the JEPD sources and the dating of these sources based strictly on the information that we find in the Bible and the various types of emphasis that each source produces, and the way how each source uses which style of Hebrew that they use, and there is a distinction in the Hebrew. This is one of the other evidences Friedman brings out on the differences between J and E, is the Hebrew is different, let alone the phrases and terminology and the emphasis in a theological or political situation, or the way they look back at their national history and who they emphasize and who they de-emphasize. Because of this, we actually have now a historical, plausible scenario for the brass plates in the Book of Mormon and Laban having those brass plates, and for the way that the Book of Mormon emphasizes steadfastly the E tradition, which is the northern tradition, which is the actual Israel heritage of Lehi, based on the evidence we have in the Book of Mormon itself, based on what the text itself says. We actually can find a historical Sittim Liban with the Book of Mormon in real-world ancient history. And here's the synthesis. Here's the plausibility that we have now, thanks to biblical scholarship. See, this is why it's important to interact with biblical scholarship. It's not the devil's tool trying to refute the Bible. No. This is trying to come to an understanding of the Scriptures, and it helps us understand our own Scriptures even more powerfully. Perfect. Beautiful. You can't ask for more. Well, you can and you should get a revelation from God yourself, but, you know, that's getting real religious, isn't it? Yeah. So, the record, engraved in Egyptian characters on the brass plates, and that's what it says, they are engraved with Egyptian characters on the brass plates, had its origin long before Lehi, of course. We know that. Strong emphasis in this account on Abraham and Joseph. Hint that this usage could have begun as early as the visit of the former to Egypt, and certainly no later than the time of Joseph, the Egyptian vizier. And to see, even that's plausible now. The emphasis on Joseph, the idea that the brass plates were written in Egyptian, it fits the evidence. Now, Joseph was a vizier in Egypt, of course. Abraham was down in Egypt also. We have our book of Abraham for that. Isn't this fascinating how all of the intricate little historical, religious, theological, political inferences match into a perfectly plausible picture? There's no direct historical contradictions about this episode in the Book of Mormon. Wow. That's fabulous. We're talking external historical understanding now. Now we can present a scenario where this makes perfect sense. Fantastic. So, the record probably reached Palestine via the tribe of Ephraim, who was Joseph's son. The lineage maintaining this particular account probably continued living in the Ephraimitic territory in northern Israel throughout the time of the divided monarchy until the Assyrians came. So when the Assyrians came to wipe out northern Israel, took away the lost 10 tribes of Israel, a lot of refugees filtered south. We say now it's plausible that some of those refugees were Lehi's grandparents or great-grandparents. This is when the northern tribes were destroyed by Assyria. At this point, the plates were likely brought south to Jerusalem by a relatively wealthy and influential descent group. We know that because of Laban. Maintaining the brass plates required becoming literate in the writing system, and that's no small acquisition itself. And then, not only just acquiring the written language, but it was added to as time went on. The genealogies were included and so on and so forth. That's why Lehi could find he was an actual descendant of Joseph, because it had been kept up in that record. So it was an active, continuous record keeping. This is the theme of the Book of Mormon. This is the basis of Nephi instructing his descendants. Continue on with this record, because that is what had been done with the biblical records. That is precisely what we find with the J, the E, the P, and the D records. A continuous keeping of the records and handing them down. This is the big theme in the book of Enoch, you know. So anyway, it's very interesting. And we know the lineage record is privately held and controlled. See, this is the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is not a worldwide history. No, it's a lineage history, a specific lineage. So are the brass plates. The lineage is from and through Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. The lineage is through the Nephite kings and record keepers, from father to son, to king to king to king. It is a lineage history. That's why it doesn't include all of the extra outside materials, because it didn't concern them. What concerned their lineage is what was kept on the record. Again, beautifully consistent with the Book of Mormon theme. Now the brass plates, the biblical theme, matches the Book of Mormon theme here. Beautiful. Very interesting. Well, at least two branches of the kinship unit having custody of the brass plates had developed by the time of Lehi in the latter half of the 7th century BC. His family had lost direct contact with the scribal branch, but were aware of some connection. The scribal branch was both wealthy and powerful within the Jerusalem establishment. Here again, Laban. Lehi's branch was also in a substantial status, though not prominent. Upon Lehi's determining to leave the kingdom of Judah in anticipation of the Babylonian destruction, he sought the plates of brass from Laban, the record custodian for the related group, and they did obtain them after much strenuous activity with great difficulty, and then departed in the desert and eventually reached the New World. Notice the plates of brass. Not brass plates, but the plates of brass. That's beautiful Hebrew. Once again, I'm just letting you know that. Just another little ditty. So Lehi had lived all of his life in Jerusalem, we know that. He found himself antipathetic to the Jews there, and they were antipathetic to him too. His personal characteristics, look at this. Lehi's personal characteristics, his attitude, his personality, his experiences also reflect the E-source. It's utterly incredible. Lehi was moralistic. He was a dreamer. He was archaistic, with a rather abstract view of God, and more concerned with historical events and sacred principles than with personalities or the concrete present. That's beautiful E characteristic. Judging by his son Nephi, Lehi himself liked to contemplate the complex symbolism and distant prophecy of an Isaiah, rather than the concreteness of Jeremiah's burdens against his contemporaries at Jerusalem. He preferred the clarity of Abraham's and Joseph's God El, Elohim, El Shaddai, El Elyon. That's the deity he preferred over a Yahweh encumbered and obscured by pagan cult practices of the Jerusalem of his day. The record-keeping tradition begun among the Nephites took its form of the character and cultural background of Lehi and Nephi, who were the two pivotal record-keepers and prophets, of course. And we can expect some change that took place between them. The form and the process of tradition-keeping manifest in Lehi's line in Palestine, and by which the Nephite scribe carried out their responsibilities. A great deal of continuity is also evident here. Nephi, a cultural hero, of course, was followed by another brother, Jacob, who confirmed the religious and literary tradition with his elder brother, and he implemented it. both of them preferred prophets who dealt at length with the northern kingdom. Isaiah on the one hand, and Zenos on the other.